Yeah, that was actually a moment where I'm like, oh, I'm kind of glad this is PG-13.
Yeah, no kidding.
I didn't want to see the outcome of that.
Oh, my God. Well, they give it to us twice.
Yeah.
Welcome to SinCast, presented by Cinemasins.
All right, everybody, welcome to the SinCast. This is Chris Atkinson from Cinemasins, joined by Jonathan Watkins from Cinemasins.
Hello, hello.
And we've already tried to do this once. We've already tried to do this intro once, but today we're doing a mini-pod.
Lily-pod.
That's right, Lily-pod of Gretel and Hansel. And, yeah, this is the Super Bowl weekend. You have a bunch of movies that are geared, I'm assuming, towards women because they assume that women don't care about the Super Bowl.
I guess,
so
yeah.
You have Gretel and Hansel, and you have the rhythm section coming out this weekend. And we just kind of had to sort of make a choice. We could have gone rhythm section. That would have been totally fine. But this movie looked more interesting than the rhythm section.
Absolutely. And I'm a fan. I've watched a lot of, well, not a lot. I mean, this is his third movie, but Osgood Perkins directed this, Gretel and Hansel, and he is the son of Anthony Perkins. And he has directed two other movies, The Blackcoat's Daughter and I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House. And I enjoyed both of those quite a bit. Mm-hmm. Blackcoat's Daughter would be like an A. Like, Blackcoat's Daughter I just loved. Mm-hmm. The Pretty Thing is not that good, but it's very interesting. Pretty Thing, actually, the turning last week reminded me of that when we talked about the turning, because it's a similar thing, a woman in a house. You don't really quite know what's going on, and but done so much better.
Okay. So I don't know where to start on this movie. I'll right off the bat, this movie is very visually arresting.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's shot tremendously well, and during a particular scene, and I don't think it's too spoilery to say, there's a scene where they eat mushrooms.
Yeah, no, I don't think it is at all.
I was sitting there thinking, we have a lot of stoner comedies, but do we have stoner horror movies?
I mean, Ooh, that's a good question. There actually was. I've never seen this movie, but there actually was a movie maybe like 10 years ago or something. I can actually look it up. I think it was called Shrooms.
Okay.
But I've never seen it. But 2007. I'm right. It was about 12 years ago. Mm-hmm. A group of friends are stalked and murdered whilst looking for some sort of mushrooms in the Irish woods. But other than that, this isn't something I've heard of. Although now that we say that, a bunch of people are going to be like, what about this and this?
Yeah, there'll be plenty of answers to that question. I just don't think we ever classify comedies as stoner comedies, but I don't think we classify in any particular horror movies as stoner horror movies.
No, I agree with that. I mean, there's definitely horror movies that the a drug-induced state might make the enjoyment a little different, or might make the experience different. But within the film itself, no.
I feel like this movie
maybe
would be enhanced with something,
or it could make it terrifying to the point that you wouldn't know what to do. I don't know. That's interesting. We're going to take a break, go watch it again real quick, and we'll come back and tell you.
It does a really good job of getting you into this. God, everything is just awful in this world that they live in. Like, everybody's poor, everybody's hungry. The land is not producing vegetables, or there's no animals around. There's also it's one of those where there's not much. Everything is just terrible.
Yeah. I was reading about it. Now I'm trying to remember where I read that, but it was it takes place in the time that people believe the story itself took place. Mm-hmm. The original, because this is based on the Hansel and Gretel fairy tale. It's the role. It's not a role reversal, but they do put Gretel before Hansel because this movie really is about Gretel. It's not. It's not about Hansel. They even do a thing where they make Gretel older than Hansel. Whereas, I think in the original story they're probably about the same age.
Yeah.
But there's quite a bit of an age difference in this.
But yeah, just right off the bat, everything's horrible.
Yes.
It looks like at the very beginning, Sophia Lillis's mom is trying to, I guess, sell her or something,
She definitely wants her to work.
yeah, or at least introduces her to one of these fat cat kind of people.
Yeah.
And it's immediately apparent that that guy doesn't really want her for any kind of work other than sex work, probably.
Yeah, and you hear some stuff like kind of off in the distance that sounds like maybe sex noises or something.
Yeah,
So
I didn't hear that actually, but
maybe I made that up. But
no, it probably was there, but I wasn't hearing that.
yeah, I got the impression there was definitely something. That place was not. That place was kind of creepy and grimy. And because what does he ask her? He
says, "Do you still have your maiden's hood?"
Yeah, that's right.
And she goes, "Excuse me,
Are you still intact?"
and then he
right?
goes, "Are you still intact?"
Yeah.
And then she narrates, and she's like, "If I had punched him in the face, would I be proud of myself and all that?" She obviously turns down the job. Comes back to her mom's, and her mom. Who is her mom played by? Because I don't think it shows it. I don't know if it shows it on the IMDb, but it's somebody that familiar.
Oh, interesting.
I thought anyway.
Yeah. So Elise Creed is the witch, and I don't know. Maybe it doesn't show. I mean, yeah,
It doesn't show, and it's somebody familiar. It's somebody that reminded me of, like, it wouldn't be Meg Tilly, but it's like somebody around that. I don't know. But the mom seemed familiar. I just couldn't see her because she was kind of in darkness, and that's the way this movie is. But she says, you should have taken that job, and now I'm going to have to let you and your brother go because I can't afford you. So that's what she does. She just sends them off into the woods.
She literally makes them leave.
And so they're just walking around aimlessly and find this one house and try to go to sleep there for the night. But then, it's just it's as soon as they get to this house, a series of events leads to them going out on another. We're trying to avoid spoilers here.
Yeah.
Trying to go out on another sort of journey.
Yeah.
Where the eventual story takes place.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, this does. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's been a long time since I've really looked at like the original Hansel and Gretel story. So maybe there's just. But I mean, this is essentially that story. I think it goes places you don't realize it's going to go. But that's the setup, at least. They find a person who's got goodies and all that kind of stuff, and obviously has some ulterior motives.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you know the Hansel and Gretel story, and you know that. I mean, they just pile some different kinds of things on it to make it unique. So let's get into the grading, and then we can get into the spoilers of this and everything. I'll go ahead.
Sure.
I wanted to like this movie just because of how well shot it is. It's beautiful to look at. And it just I never was wrapped into this thing.
I feel like that's going to be what this movie is, right? You're either going to get caught up in it or you're not.
Yeah, and I just wasn't. I was like, I really like the mood of this movie, and it kind of reminded me of The Witch, and like The Witch had that sort of feeling to it where, you're out in the middle of the woods and there's some supernatural forces and everything, but I never could connect to it. So I'm going to call this a C-.
Okay. I'm the opposite. So I got into this pretty much from the get-go, and it just I don't know. I was into it the whole time.
Okay.
But it is weird. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where even though I really liked it, I totally get what you're saying. Like, I feel like it's going to be that kind of movie. Now, I think your average audience, which I'm seeing this on Rotten Tomatoes, the difference between critics and the audience, it's like 61 to 12%.
Yeah.
So, and based on the what I heard in the audience I was with last night, which actually wasn't like small. The theater was probably like 2/3 full. I don't think people really enjoyed it overall. Like it seemed like people were giggling or getting restless, that kind of thing. I totally get that. I mean, I kind of feel like like when I watch something like this and I get into it, I think back to people talking about how much they liked, like say The Lighthouse, or The Witch. And I wasn't there, but I got there here, and I don't know if it's just because I like the way I like Perkins' style. I definitely like Osgood Perkins' style. I mean, I think that's proven by liking his last 2 movies. This might be my least favorite of his 3. It might be better than the Pretty Thing Who Lives in the House, but I don't know. I was pretty captivated by it the whole time. We can get more into that in spoilers. You did mention visually. This movie's just awesome to look at. And the cinematographer, I'm going to butcher this name, Gallo Oliveras, but this was apparently his first film.
Interesting. That
he did cinematography on. Now, he worked on some other stuff. Like, he was on Roma. He was like a camera operator on Roma. Well, I'm sorry. This actually isn't. Well, everything before this was a short. Now, he's doing some cinematography on some upcoming things, but this was like his first like feature film.
Well, this will certainly get him a lot of work.
I would think so. Yeah, even if this movie doesn't, which I don't think this movie's going to do that great.
Probably not.
I don't know how much it costs. I mean, it might make money, but I can't imagine. I mean, I saw they're projecting it to make between like $4 and $7 million this weekend. But yeah, I'm gonna give it I'm somewhere between a B and a B plus. I think right now I'm just gonna give it a B, but I could definitely see this going up a little bit as I get into future viewing. So I mean, I'm not saying it's a classic. I'm not saying I loved it, but like I said, it was definitely captivating. It's easily the best horror film I've seen in 2020.
That's a good. That's probably a good assessment.
But it's a lot better than. In fact, it was funny. The Turning, bringing that up again. I felt like this did a better job of what The Turning was maybe trying to do. This is a real moody, slow burn, creepy little like horror film set piece or whatever. And I don't know. I thought the acting was better, but maybe it's just because the characters are better written. You've got like Sophia Lillis, you've got Elise Creed as the witch and everything.
Is it Elise or Alice?
Maybe it is Alice. I don't know
seems
that
like
I've
regular
heard it.
Alice to me.
It does. Yeah, it is spelled that way. So you're probably right. Let's go with Alice. The Borg Queen from Star Trek First Contact.
Right. That's where you know her from.
Yeah. Or possibly Sleepwalkers when she was, having sex with her son. And then turned into a cat. That's a weird fucking movie.
Yeah.
But I thought the performances were really good, and I thought that like I said, it looked great. The mood was just perfect for me. I don't know. I was captivated, so I'm giving it a B.
Okay. Let's move on to spoilers.
No spoilers!
Kevin Spacey is Kaiser Soze.
Luke's father is actually Darth Vader. She's the sister and the daughter. They just
No. I'm reading the books.
Okay, so yeah, I get what you're saying. I think the mood of this movie was something that puts you in a state where it will at least keep your attention. It just that nothing that was happening on screen was doing it for me. There's the part that we alluded to in the beginning is that they go to this one house, they try to go to sleep there, and then there's some, I don't know.
Well, he's called the Hunter, which I think that is a character in the original story, right?
Yes, but there's something else in the house.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. It's almost like they never say it is a creature. I guess it's probably just supposed to be like someone like them that was just maybe
I don't know,
squatting.
man. I really think this might be some sort of creature, vampire, or something like that.
Yeah.
And then it's the movie's first real scare.
Yes.
And he chases them out the house and everything, and then the hunter ex machina is the situation.
It's Charles Babalola plays the hunter,
and he tells them that I believe he tells them that you need to go out here, follow my directions, and go to this one place, but they get lost.
Yeah, because he makes it very specific. Like it's like American Werewolf in London. Do not stray from the path. Stay on the path, and he gives them a map and everything. And he's like, and I mean, there's definitely something there because like he's genuine. Like he's genuinely trying to help them.
Yeah.
Because there's this whole thing in this movie, especially with the Sophia Lillis character. There's this whole thing with her a lot in the movie where she's talking about she keeps telling her brother Hansel, who's played by Samuel Leakey, she keeps telling him that he can't trust people. Like, everyone's got an ulterior motive, and once they get to the witch's house, they kind of go into more detail about that. But so that's kind of, I don't know, that was kind of an interesting thing to me, that like this guy actually ended up being, I think, genuinely trying to help him. I guess one could read into it that maybe he was leading them that way.
Yeah,
but he was very specific about not getting off the path, and I feel like that mushroom scene is where that's when they get off that's when they start doing something.
Yeah,
differently.
they're very hungry. They don't have anything. They haven't had anything to eat for a while, and then they go out and into the woods and don't have anything to eat. So the mushrooms probably look like steaks to them. At this point.
Probably so.
And there's a big tripping scene essentially,
which is quite humorous, but it's also like it's kind of got that like art house feel. It's like an art house tripping scene.
Yeah, exactly. And it was at this point that I was like, I might actually like this movie at some point. But then they find this house, and Hansel sort of like sneaks into the house through a small opening, window that's got a slightly ajar, and he goes around and he sees there's just like all this food on the table. And then, Alice Creed comes in and looks like she's about to do something really fucked up.
Yeah.
And Gretel tries to smash into the house and can't. But then Alice Creed comes out and she's like, oh, come on in. I've got stuff.
Did you know it was Alice Creed?
No.
I didn't either. The whole time I was watching it, I was like, God, I really like this actress. I'm really curious who this is. But, of course, I'm in the movie. I'm not going to look it up then. And then I looked it up afterwards. And I was like, oh, it was the Boar Queen. Like, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen her in a while, probably. But, she's great, I think.
Yeah, I think she is. No, there's nothing wrong with the acting in this movie.
No, and Sophia Lillis, I mean, she just keeps making me think more and more. I'm really looking forward to what her career ends up being. Because I guess she's still technically a kid. I mean, she turns 18, I think, this year. But she's still young, and she hasn't done a ton. I mean, she did the It movies, and then Nancy Drew, which actually, especially if you've got like a young child, a young girl or whatever, I highly recommend that. Actually, I took my daughter to see that when it came out in the theater and really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and she also has a couple of flashback scenes and Sharp Objects that came.
That's true.
HBO came on,
so she was she was Amy Adams,
young Amy Adams. This woman has all this food, and of course, Gretel is sort of, I guess she's advanced beyond her years because she's already lived a hard life, probably. Yes. She's already suspicious of all this because why in the world would someone who's just living out by themselves and there's no farm animals, there's nothing growing outside, have all this food? How's it possible?
Yeah, and she even does things like she'll even try to get her to let her go into town because she thinks, well, maybe she goes somewhere and gets stuff, know, and then and I get that impression too. I mean, I get the impression they don't ever say it, but I think the mom must be sick or something. Like there's something going on with the mom. So I get the impression that she's had to raise the brother, and she's been kind of the person that's taking care of everything leading up to this point. So
that makes sense. It's and then it's sort of this never-ending series of they eat, and then late at night, Gretel dreams about something, and there's a series of just dreams, but I guess they're real. I didn't ever really get that.
That was interesting. I did I do think that. I got the impression that most of them were actually supposed to be real because it even gets to the point where in the narration, I will admit, is the one thing I didn't really care for in this movie. But I think the reason it's there is because I don't know if it was studio interference, but I do think there was something like, well, I don't know if people will know exactly what's going on if we don't use it,
But she supposedly has this sort of vision that they talk about.
Yeah.
It could just be things that she knows are happening, and that she's there to witness it, but she's not actually there. And but the whole movie sort of starts off with this story about this this little girl whose father brought her to a witch, and the witch saved her because she had some disease, but also left her with a power.
Yeah,
and so it soon became known that she had this power. People were coming to her and asking what their futures were, but apparently all the futures were bad.
Yeah,
and then in the scene that I think is both funny and hilarious, I mean funny and horrifying. This little girl starts killing everybody, including her dad, and her dad's like a smith, a stone, like a
blacksmith,
he's a blacksmith or whatever, and he pulls up this hot poker thing and opens his mouth and starts put the hot poker in his mouth.
That was actually a moment where I'm like, oh, I'm kind of glad this is PG-13.
Yeah, no kidding.
I didn't want to see the outcome of that.
Oh my god! Well, they give it to us twice and cut it off just before. But yeah, she's considered a big danger, and then we're sort of led to believe that she grows up to be this witch.
Yeah,
that's in the middle of the woods. That's what we're led to believe this whole time, until we have a big whammy ending where she explains, "Oh, I'm her mom."
Yeah, for sure. In fact, I actually thought there was one moment, maybe it was the moment where I first realized that some of her dreams were true. I thought that maybe Sophia Lillis was going to end up like somehow being that person. I don't know. I thought there was going to be some twist with her, because clearly, like you said, she's got some kind of power, and then to the point where Alice Creed even starts grooming her.
Yeah.
To help her, which ends up being her undoing.
Oh yeah.
This is, so.
Yeah, she starts learning the Force.
Yeah. Yeah, basically, yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
And it does kind of feel like Dagobah.
Yeah. She goes out and she's like, oh, look at this. I can move trees with my mind. And there's a whole scene where they're at a dinner table and she makes this staff, stand upright, and just stuff like that.
And that's where I believe that's where the story starts deterring a little bit from the source material, because I don't believe that's something that happens in Hansel and Gretel.
Hansel and Gretel is very basic, as I remember it. It's the two kids are sent out into the woods. They find the witch's house. It's like a gingerbread house or something like that. Yeah. And it could be like a lot of versions of this too, but they go in, the witch has a whole bunch of stuff for them, but then they find out quickly that she wants to eat them. Yeah. But then they end up throwing her in the oven.
Yeah, they trick her somehow or something. It's been a long time. Yeah. So that's where this started. You kind of get that up to a certain point, maybe the first 45 minutes, you get like she's having them for dinner and they're staying there and stuff. And then once they start thinking weird stuff's happening, or Gretel does, Hansel thinks it's perfectly fine because he wants it to be. Then it starts going off in this other direction. Because I don't even know, I don't even know if it matters, but Alice Creed, she's actually credited as Hulda, is her name in the movie apparently. I don't know if she was originally going to kill both of them, and then she just discovered that Gretel was something she could
very
work with. Yeah, I couldn't really figure that part out. I don't know that it matters.
Yeah, but, it doesn't, because and Gretel, obviously, during one of her dream sequences, she witnesses the I guess it's the younger version.
It is. And I even got at one point that might be her, and that she was just kind of the old lady she thought was more presentable.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting. But yeah, Jessica DeGao, who's been in a bunch of TV shows.
Well, and she even says that. The older Hulda says, I make this appearance to look.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and so, yeah, she witnesses this ritual that she has where she opens up this pail of some sort, and you can hear children screaming down there.
Yeah. And once again, also like the turning, that almost looked like she was in an empty pool. I just want to
Yeah.
I don't know what this is in 2020 horror movies.
Yeah. And this is it's possible too that if I watch this again with the knowledge that I have now, that I'll pick up on some things and think it's a better movie, because for a while there, all you're doing is like, what's going on? What's the deal? And the probably one of the best reveals of this movie is this young Hulda pulling children's parts out of this pale thing, and making the food that they've been eating.
Yeah, that was disturbing and cool.
Yeah, yeah, and so she knows that, and she knows the whole thing. Now she's has to play dumb that she doesn't know all this is going on. Now it is weird too. I guess it's also a possibility because of her powers that she has, Sophia Lillis.
Yeah.
That she's able to keep this away from a woman who also can read minds and tell the future and all that. I don't know how that happens.
I don't either, and you could also read it that maybe even she knows, but just that it doesn't bother her.
Yeah.
But I also thought it was interesting, and I don't know if this was intentional or not, but I felt like after that scene, when we would have Sophia Lillis's view of like the food and stuff, all of a sudden it didn't look as good. Like it looked older. And,
right.
Yeah. And I mean, I assume that was intentional. That was my take.
I totally agree with that because if you don't know what it is, it looks like the best food in the world. Yeah. Especially if you're hungry.
Yeah.
And then as it goes along, it looks worse and worse as it gets along.
Yeah, it was really, really, really interesting choices.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think, but I do get your point, and I know this is kind of what the pretty thing that lives in the house suffered from. I think he did a better job with it in Blackcoat's Daughter. But I do think Perkins is I don't know if he's as good I think he's a better visual storyteller than he is like a narrative storyteller, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, film's a visual medium, but I do think that is part of what keeps this from getting even better in my mind, like going up closer to the A territory, is that a lot of it, when it's all over, it's a lot of cool scenes, a lot of cool visuals. I don't know that I didn't get enough substance out of it, I guess, to take it into that level.
Yeah.
But I think there are just a couple of things that keep it from getting there, and I don't know if I can pinpoint those exactly. And I know a lot of people are going to not like this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm positive about that.
It's unfortunate. I mean, and here I am. I'm giving it a C-, but I'm actually giving a lot of benefit of the doubt to it, even though I gave it that low rating. And who knows? I might be up in that B area at some point. Because it's not terrible. It's definitely not a terrible movie.
No, it's not. It's not underwater.
It's just that it's not. Like I said, the main thing for me was that it wasn't grabbing me. It wasn't drawing me in with certain things. I think Sophia Lillis is great and carries this movie pretty well.
Oh yeah.
But there's not anything that I can really sort of latch onto, and that's the unfortunate thing about movies like this. It's hard to be impressed on one viewing, and then then after that one viewing, you're like, I don't know if I want to watch this again. And then the second viewing, but you were impressed on the first viewing, so you're completely different from where I'm at.
Well, and I read where some people, after I watched it and thought about it, I read a couple things, and I read where some people were talking about it. It reminded them of like Mario Bava and like Italian cinema, and even like the score. And that's a wheelhouse for me, because I'm a big fan of a lot of those like older Italian horror films and stuff like that Bava did, and Dario Argento and Lucio Fulci and all those guys. So I definitely could see that, and I did love the score. The score is another thing I really liked, even though it's kind of subtle. It's not like over the top or anything, but I thought it worked within the context of what was going on really well. And just from a technical standpoint, this movie just got me from the beginning. And then, I don't know, I really like, I've discovered over the last, although I wasn't a big fan of The Witch, this might sound weird, but I've discovered that like stuff like witchcraft and like cults and things like that really they can grab my attention. If the story's told well enough. There's something about that that's just unsettling to me. Not that I really believe that's a thing, but like you can, have all these powers and do all this stuff, but I don't know. I just find that very, very unsettling. So I think that also helped me, latch onto this a little better.
Yeah, I think for me, you start watching this, and the whole thing, the whole time you're watching it, you're like, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? And so a lot of scenes just sort of fall off a cliff, and you don't know what the hell that was about, and it doesn't make any sense, and then you get frustrated, and then by the time it tells you what's going on, or that it finally gives you an idea of what's going on, and then you go back and think about it, you're like, oh, okay, but then like all that unenjoyment you had for an hour, and then like it gives you this, oh, okay, now the key to understanding this movie is right there at the end. I don't know, it's unfair, I guess, for me to judge it too harshly after the first viewing.
But it's also a weird movie because even though I liked it and overall I give it it's a positive experience for me, I feel like I need to see it again to even talk about it. Really, it's a hard movie to discuss like less than 24 hours later. Like because I don't feel like I'm selling it, even though I'm telling you I like it. But there's just this, I don't know, it's just this type of horror movie. It's kind of like Ari Aster's doing these kind of movies like Hereditary. I think Hereditary and Midsommar are better than this. But those are examples of maybe more popular ones over the past couple years that people have really latched onto.
Yeah.
And then I think Eggers is definitely doing this kind of horror with Lighthouse and The Witch. And I think maybe Osgood Perkins is a little bit of a lighter version, although I'd probably take him over Eggers. But I still think that's kind of that if you want to get an idea of what this is like, that's the wheelhouse. I think that's the playground we're in, and there's a lot of other movies like these that have come out too over the last 10 years or so.
I guess that's a good comp. Ari Aster is one of those like even though both of those movies, Hereditary and Midsommar, I didn't like the first time, and then the second time through, I'm like, oh yeah, I really like this, but also. First time through on those movies, I knew for a fact that I was going to probably like it more on the second.
That's always interesting, but that does happen.
Because you know how well made they are. But this one, I'm not sure. But still, I mean, it could be in that same league of those movies. It feels like a disservice because we are reviewing this movie. This is why it's a struggle to review it. It feels like a disservice that we come on here and we're like, here's our grade after one attempt at watching this movie, and now it's going to probably change, and we're going to ask what we're. I think I can live with that, I guess.
No, well, and especially, I mean, I think so with this one too. First, another positive about this movie, it's like 87 minutes, which is definitely a positive.
Hell yeah.
So it moves pretty quickly, even though it's a slow burn. Like it moves pretty quickly, which is definitely a positive. I also don't think this is quite as complex, or I don't know that this has as much to it as those two Ari Aster movies. Is it Ari Aster? Have we just decided that? I don't know.
I've never heard his name pronounced.
I don't think I have either.
I'm assuming it's like Ari, like Ari Gold, and then,
that's true.
And then Aster is just Aster.
Yeah. So you're probably right. But I don't know if this is quite has as much to say as like Hereditary or Midsommar, and I don't even think this is quite as much to say as like The Blackcoat's Daughter, which was his first movie, which I highly recommend you watch. I'm really curious what you think about that. That's got a really cool cast too. That's like Lucy Boynton's in that, Kieran Shipka, and Emma Roberts is in it. And it's fascinating. But it's kind of like this too, in that you don't really know where it's going. And maybe that's just these types of movies. I mean, this is a weird comparison, but take something like Knives Out, where I mean, you don't know where that's going, but I don't know but it's still more straightforward. It's more, I guess, entertaining.
There are things that you can
latch
onto in those movies.
Yeah.
That's what I think. It's fine not knowing where you're going.
Yeah.
But you have something to latch onto where you're like, that was a great scene, or that was a, this was a. There's something that you and I can't put it into words right now, but like. In these movies where you don't know where things are going, there are always scenes that you can latch onto, like, hey, that was funny, or hey, that was scary, or whatever. This movie is like, what the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck? And then finally it tells you, here's what the fuck, and then you're like, oh.
Well, and I did just realize that was a terrible example, because at least with something like Knives Out, that's a murder mystery. Like you know where you're going to. Whereas something like this, you don't really know if it's a mystery. You don't know if there's even going to be a twist. I mean, look at something like The Turning, where it just ends. I keep bringing up that shitty movie, but they're so close together. It's just fitting. And this movie does actually have an ending. It has an interesting ending. I think it actually has some interesting things to say I mean, I think there's definitely some parallels with the struggles that are going on in this society versus what we deal with today. I mean, you could look at, you just struggles with women. I mean, the lack of food and stuff obviously really isn't a thing now, but there is things that relate to that. So I can definitely see stuff like that. But so there's that kind of subtext to it. But I don't think he's really trying to point out anything with that. But it's interesting.
Yeah, and there's the usual fairy tale stuff of like of children turning into adults and everything. I think there's even a point in here where she looks down in her bed, and we're supposed to believe that's her first period or something.
Yeah.
And so there's that type of thing too going on, where this is a journey into womanhood. The entire setup is that, But anyway, I think we got more out of this movie than I was expecting. Maybe it is a B.
Like I said, I hated it because after I watched it, I was just like, I really like this. I have no idea what I'm going to talk about tomorrow, though. But I even tried to like write stuff down, and it was just kind of like, I don't know. It's just such a mood piece. Like, it's very much just like, I guess maybe some movies are just like experiences, right? They're not, because narratively, I think you could. Well, narratively, it's very simple, I guess. And you could argue that maybe structurally the story itself isn't told that well, but there's just such an amazing visual element to this movie. Like, I could just watch without sound. Like, I could just watch this movie.
For sure.
There's
a scene in there where they're in the woods, and the trees and the sky and everything are it's something out of Tim Burton, but it's not as cartoony.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's just something wicked cool about it and everything. So.
Yeah, and I don't really know. I mean, Perkins, obviously, he's got the familial attachment with, Anthony Perkins, but I mean, I don't know. And then he was also, most people probably know him, if anything, he's in Legally Blonde. He plays, I don't remember the character's name, but he's kind of like, I guess you'd call him like the nerdy guy that kind of becomes her friend. He's at the law school with Reese Witherspoon. Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
But he is in that movie. He's one of the, I guess he's a supporting character, but that's probably the thing most people would actually know him from. But he's a really interesting filmmaker, and I'm really curious. He's and I was looking at some stuff he's doing. He's adapting a really good novel by Paul Tremblay that came out a few years ago called Head Full of Ghosts. So, but he's not writing that one, so I'm really curious what that's going to be like. So I'm really excited. I hope, I can't imagine this cost enough to where this would mess up his career in any way, even if it doesn't make money. But I like that at least this is getting his name out there maybe to more people that didn't know him. Because the past two movies, one of them was a Netflix movie. One of them had barely a release at all. So if anything, it did that at least, I hope. And I hope this is like Astor and like Eggers. I hope this is a guy that, gets more into the public consciousness so we can see more of his stuff.
I think I'm officially turned around enough to think that this could be something that is much better in my eyes when I see it again.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to watch this again at some point.
All right, so there may not be very many people out there who saw this, but if you did, go to SinCast presented by Cinemasins on Facebook. We're also on Cinemasins. We have Cinemasins Twitter, Music Video Sins Twitter. We're on SoundCloud. We also have a Discord. If you want to get on Discord, you can go to the Reddit page and see a link on the right side of the page, or you can go to Facebook and private message me, and I will give you a link there. Where can people find you, Jonathan?
I am on Twitter at SamLoomis13, and you can hear me every week on the Behind the Sins podcast with Aaron Dicer and Danae Hughes.
All right. Well, that'll do it for this mini-pod. It's Chris Atkinson and Jonathan Watkins. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. Comment on our episodes on our SoundCloud page. Check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit. And be sure to visit cinemasins.com.